said about certain things, but just working and having a 3-year-old daughter that is in need of attention, and she's at that age where, you know, she was in daycare 5 days a week to being home with us, and we're her sole entertainer. So getting around that has just been like literally the toughest thing that we've had to deal with.
Oh, well, you guys are getting right through it, man. But I'm going to start right here too, because I know you guys, you and Tasha just doing a great job with your kid. A new kid, of course, have probably something coming up soon, but I'm not going to get into that. But I just want to talk about your life right now and just the start of your sporting life altogether, right? I've seen it all. I remember Tasha telling me a lot. You know, different people telling me about your career and whatnot, growing up, going towards Concordia University. But before that, your love for football, where did that originally generate? Was that from is it Pickering Dolphins back then? Is that what it was?
So it's actually interesting. Like, so I started out hockey. I started out with hockey. Started out from, I want to say 5 or 6, learning to skate at 3, 4. And playing hockey. I was just playing house league at that time. And then in grade 10, it came to the point where there's like, you know what, why don't you play rep hockey, right? And like for me, I've always been a smaller guy. Like I'm 5'8", like 190 right now. But I was just like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. There's body checking. And then people were like, don't worry, you're fine. Just do it. So I ended up playing hockey, and there was like a select hockey, and it was just contact hockey. And I got hit for the first time, and I realized I'm like, this doesn't hurt. And like, I've actually created these things in my head that weren't actually reality. Mm-hmm. So from there, I was like, if I'm playing contact hockey, why don't I just try football? Mm-hmm. My dad's always told me from like when I was grade 7, grade 8, he's like, why don't you just play football? I'm like, no, I don't know if I can do that. Like, so that's me self-imposing doubt on myself. Yeah. So I ended up actually just going out for my high school football team, which ended up in grade 10. Wow. And, you know, Terrell Owens at that time was my favorite. I was playing receiver. Terrell Owens was my favorite receiver. And so I ended up, you know, trying out for the football team. I make it. I start my first game ever, and I ended up getting like an 80-yard touchdown the first drive. Like it just, all right. It was like fake 32, right fly. I was a right side receiver. Yeah. I flew, boom. I caught the ball, ran into the end zone. It was just like, whoa. Yeah. You know, maybe this is something for me. Mm-hmm. So from there, I ended up doing really well that year. Then I ended up moving over to Pickering Dolphins. Right. So that year, I tried out for that summer. So it was summer 2006, if I can remember. Yeah. Summer 2006, I tried out for the rep team at that time, which was OVFL. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I ended up getting cut. So what they did is instead of cutting us and we're not playing football, we got demoted to the B team, which was Confl. Mm-hmm. So I ended up playing Confl. I played receiver there. We did well. I can't remember exactly where we ended up, but we ended up losing in the second round of the playoffs. And then it was when I got to grade 11 is when I knew, all right, you can do something with this football thing, Kris. And that's kind of where my journey got started.
Wow. So it started with hockey initially too. Like, it's funny because even myself, my brothers, we started in hockey too. I was a big after like Mighty Ducks time, where a lot of people were just in hockey, and we actually got into. My brother played AAA, and it's crazy how that kind of transitions, right? But I'm pretty blessed to do that. But for you, you said like Forrest that you started playing football in the receiver position because of Terrell Owens. How did you end up becoming a strong safety later on? Like, did you just love hitting? Was it like where did that even where did that garner from in a sense? Was it your way to make the team? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, so if we go to grade 11, I told you when I was like, all right, I'm pretty good at this football thing. I ended up getting called out for Team Ontario in 2007. So that's, summer 2007, I got called. My coach from high school recommended me for the Team Ontario team. So that's how I got there. And he basically just said to me, just like, listen, you are not going to go anywhere as a receiver. Again, he's like, you're 5'8". At that time, I was like 160, soaking wet, maybe. Mm-hmm. And it was the coach just said, listen, man, you're not you're not going to play receiver. He's like, I actually can see you doing something serious with this and like actually going to university. And at that time, university was even like a thought in my head or even playing at that level. And he's like, you could go to the next level, but you need to go to defensive back. He's just like, with your quickness, your speed, right? He's in your size, it works to your advantage. And I was like, all right, cool. He switched me to that position. So my first time ever playing DB was for Team Ontario. Wow. I ended up being team. I can't remember what it was called. It's like the all-star at the tournament. So I was all-star for my position at that tournament. I ended up with 4 picks in 4 games, right? So I was just like, okay, I guess I can play DB. And then that's kind of just how it worked. So at every point of my life, I just kind of surprised myself. Mm-hmm. And then that surprise turned into, okay, I believe in myself more.
Right. So the move to St. Mary's really did a lot. So when it comes to just the tenacity you have, like the mentality you had with it, like, of course, you're taking that as a receiver, you're switching sides, playing DB, you know what these receiver routes are, you know what exactly all the concepts and whatnot, you're undercutting different stuff. I've seen enough of your huddle videos to see exactly how you play that position, but just going into it, like your mentality going into it, like do you have to teach yourself how to like tackle properly? Did that come naturally, or is it something that your father had to like, you know, teach you, or where did that come from, like for Haiti and like, you know, all that stuff?
Really and truly, like at the time, I wasn't able to self-reflect or self-analyze what was going on or why I was that, but like retroactively, like going back, like hindsight's always 20/20, as I always say, and going back and like actually looking back at myself and like how my mentality was, like I remember those moments, and I think it really comes down to is just I have like this underdog mentality, mm-hmm. right? So it's just like, again, every time whenever I went to like recruiting trips or anything like that, it was just like, Kris, right. And it was just like, you looked so much bigger when you play, and this, I didn't expect you to be 5'8", 165, 170, or whatever it may be at that time. So I always knew like I was a smaller person, so I had to do more. Right. So it was like I always played with like a chip on my shoulder. So everything I did was just, all right, you know. And my strong suits are what I hung myself on, and my weaknesses I always built up. And then as for like influence, I'd have to say Brian Dawkins. Brian Dawkins, you know, every DB knows Weapon X, boom, boom. Yeah. His highlight tape is something I watch literally before every single game. And, you know, me and my best friend, Brandon Jeffries, ended up actually, we were playing together that time, and we had something we called Buck Life. So it was just something that, it was just a mentality. That's all it was. That's all it comes down to.
So, of course, you as a strength conditioning coach now, I do want to bring it back to, I still want to be in the early years, but there was a quote you had on your Twitter saying, it doesn't matter if you're a lion or gazelle, when the sun comes up, you better be running. So, like, you have this underdog mentality, regardless if you're a gazelle or a lion, you're going to keep pushing there. But with St. Mary's, like, being in St. Mary's and playing the way you did, of course, with your friend, but just in general, you had this underdog mentality. Now taking that and going from Pickering, Ontario, because you're Pickering native, and going now to the Montreal, pretty much Concordia University, how was that transition for you? Like, of course, in grade 12 too, you did get the an academic scholar award, right? So you did have really good marks that one year. I'm pretty sure every year, obviously, but do you pride yourself on, hey, grade 12, I have to get towards the university. I need to get more calls. This is the right school for me. Take me through that process.
Yeah, so really and truly for me, I realized that this football thing was something real too late for me to end up going to the States. So my whole goal was to end up, I want to go to the States. That's where the best players go. And I was just too late in the process. So as for going through that process, it was, I'm going to end up with a Canadian university. That's fine. I know the marks that I needed. So, I got those marks, get it 80%. Right. I'm not even to this day, I'm not even the greatest student. But if it's something that I'm really passionate about, something that I know I need to do, I'll get to it. And, uh, a coach from, where is he from? St. FX, Gary Waterman, always told me, do what you have to do so you can do what you want to do.
Exactly.
Right. So that's something that just really stuck with me. And that's kind of the mentality I have. So it's just do what you got to do, man. And what I want to do is I want to play football. I want to be professional. I want to do this. So I'm like, get the grades that you need. You can get the academic scholarship. You're laughing, Not a lot of kids can leave school with like next to no debt. And, I was fortunate enough to do that. So that's kind of how I looked at it.
That's amazing. That's amazing too. And even in your family too, like who inspired you? And kind of just, were your parents very supportive from the get-go, saying, hey, this is what you want to do. You have a future in this. Were they pushing you constantly with your siblings? Who was someone that in your life that actually pushed you forward to say, hey, go achieve your goals. Keep going. This is what you got to do. Have that mentality and kind of push you through it all.
Really and truly, like who I am by nature, whatever I want, I go for it. And I don't care what happens. Mm-hmm. If it's good, bad, or ugly, like I'm not scared. I run after it at 1,000 kilometers an hour. My parents, they have to say like they're 100% supportive of what I wanted to do. So if I said this is what I needed to do, this is what I wanted to do, they allowed me and they believed in me. So like they were 100% my support system. They never really had to inspire me or push me because that was something that for me is just something that I have within. It was intrinsic. And like football literally was everything. Mm-hmm. Wake up in the morning. What is this? When I wake up in the morning, this food that I'm eating, is it going to get me one step closer to where I want to be? Mm-hmm. Like that's literally was my only thought process at that time frame in my life.
Wow.
So I didn't need anything outside to, people are like, oh, well, I needed this to push me. I didn't need that. Like it was literally in my head. And I realized that I was the only person that could stop me from being who I wanted to be.
That's awesome. That's a great tip for a lot of young people that actually listen to this podcast too, regardless of what their athletic ability is. Doesn't matter. You have to keep pushing yourself just intrinsically and make sure you go forward with that. But yeah, that's crazy. So then now at Concordia University, the transition from going from Pickering to Concordia, I saw something come out. You were the fittest male athlete. How do they assess the fittest male athlete at Concordia University? And just like your time at Concordia as well, playing against the likes of McGill, playing against the likes of Laval, all these great schools that have really rich programs. Your experience at Concordia, was that something that you really cherished? And how was the transition in the start going from grade 12 to Montreal? And how did that shape you?
So it was really a big transition. So I ended up going back to high school, for fifth year.
Yeah.
Right. So I did a half a semester, then I worked the second semester, and partly was due that my body wasn't physically ready to move to that next level. Right. So, being a strength and conditioning coach now, I understand the science, and my thought process is really flawed back then. So, being someone who was smaller, there was that mythical thought out there. If you lift weights, you're going to get shorter, you're going to stunt your growth. Yeah. So even though that's not actually real, it's something that I believed in. So that actually hindered me. And I realized that I was behind the 8 ball when it comes to from a physical standpoint. I was really fast. So it's like I had that, intrinsically or innately. So I went back to school. I built up my body, and going to Montreal now. So the reason why I actually chose Montreal, or chose Quebec, I should say, is one, just because the level of football, in my opinion, again, I can be wrong, but I believe, and that's really all that matters, is that the football in Quebec is better than anywhere else in the country.
Ooh, okay. Got you. Got it.
Football, the reason why I believe football is there is, one, these guys are just older. So I look at my roommate, Nathan Taylor. Me and him were rookies. He's 21. I'm 18.
Holy, yeah, exactly.
I'm
Yeah,
playing against grown men,
yeah.
right?
Our sec.
So, I look at that. I'm just like, if I went to the OUA, there's no disrespect on the OUA. This is just my personal opinion. It just comes down to the OUA with just a younger demographic. It's a lot more. Kids are going in at 17, going out at 18, just like myself, because I'm an Ontario kid. And then they're playing against other kids their age. Whereas I was playing my Laval my first year. I'm playing against grown men.
Of course. Yes.
So growing up in a place, I went there and I lived there, 5 years of my life I lived there. And everyone's older than me.
Mm-hmm.
And for the first time, it's just like I felt I'm the oldest, so me and my sister is like, I felt like a little brother. I felt like, I'm learning a lot from these older people. Right. And that's kind of what I took from my Concordia experience. Everyone that I came into interaction with was older than me. They've been in my shoes. They've seen what I've done. So I looked at that. It was like, oh, okay. I'm learning from someone who, was in my position 3 years ago.
Yeah. Wow.
And history repeats itself. So you're like, listen, man, when I was your age, I did this. I learned from them, opposed to always making the mistakes on my own and then having to learn that way. So I learned through other people. And that's kind of what really, really helped me. And I feel that was the best part of me moving to Montreal. And the second part about that as well is moving to Montreal. It's far enough from home, but it's close enough to home. So it was just a Via Rail train, a mega bus, and I was there in 4 or 5 hours, and I was fine.
Mm-hmm. That's perfect. I remember just back then, too, I'm like, Montreal. Because when you're 18, 17 years old, a lot of the guys look at you, comfort zone, right? You want to stay in Ontario. But from a football perspective, I see that exactly what you did was perfect for your transcendence and whatnot. But once again, you're a CIS All Canadian. All right, you've had so many accolades in the CIS, and you've done a lot from a returning perspective, punt returning, kickoff return, and of course defensively. Seeing your videos, I remember seeing it back then and be like, "Oh, this guy's nasty. This guy's faster than everyone else," right? And I even going back and seeing you working out in the sand dunes in the summer, going into the forest and doing all these runs and whatnot. Was your summer routine? Like I see there's something similar to like Kobe Bryant, who's always working around the clock. In university, was your routine just that you come back home from you come back home, of course, in the off season? Are you working every single day? Were you preparing your body in the way that your strength conditioning coach, informed you to do? Was it more was it more something you just wanted to do initially? And I'll get to yes.
So, yeah, like I treated it. There was one guy that was there my first year, and his name was Corey Greenwood. He ended up becoming a free agent, going to the NFL, and yes. He had, I want to say, a 4 or 5 year career, came to the CFL. He was good. Now, Greenwood was like the gold standard.
Yes,
okay?
He was, yes.
So I was with him for 1 year, but I got to ask him every goddamn question I needed to. So I was just like, what do you do? Why do you do this, do that? And what he did is he treated it as if he was a pro already. Mm-hmm. So like back then, if you look like 2009, 2010, like when Twitter was in like its heyday, like that was the only social media. Mm-hmm. A lot of I'd follow a lot of these NFL players, and I just follow like, okay, what are they doing day to day? And just like, they just tell me, okay, they would post, I'm working out this time, I'm eating this time, I'm doing this time. And then I would ask them, I would at them as much as I could. It'd be like, hey, what does your day look like? Yeah. Ask everyone I could. And I would actually get responses. So I would hear responses like, I can remember I got one response from Josh Cribbs. And he was just like, this is my day. Boom, 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 boom. And I was just like, good. Yeah. This is what he's doing. I'm going to do the same thing because he's exactly where I want to be. Right? And it was the same with Greenwood. So literally my day was 9 to 5, 9 to 5, 9 to 6, in around there. I'd wake up, I'd have my breakfast, digest, go to the gym. I'd come back, I would train people, like I was a personal trainer at that time. I'd train people, go to my second workout of the day, eat, digest, go to my third workout of the day, and that's kind of what I did literally all summer.
Wow.
And that's kind of what got my body to where it needed to be.
Wow, that's literally what. Okay, that's crazy. Speaking of Josh Cribbs, just okay. Your football journey started, of course, as a receiver. Right, you did a lot of punt returning. You had six touchdowns. I remember when you're all together when returning had a lot. I'm gonna read it out right now. Just have all of the the stats right here. 32 punts, 297 yards, while adding another 636 on kickoff returns. Playing strong safety and returning the football. Did you get just a good mix of both worlds, in the sense where you're still scoring touchdowns, but you're doing what you do best, in the sense where playing defense and guarding these guys? Like, which one did you prefer most? And did you see yourself later on becoming that returner extraordinaire, special teams extraordinaire?
So, to me, returning is, I feel returning is more innate. It's more something. Like, I remember I had an interview once and someone was like, what do you do? Or like, what are you thinking when you're going there? And like,
just thinking.
Literally, it is a blank slate and you just react. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Where the defense, like the returning is, like whenever someone talks about me, they always talk about returning. But I want to get credit for my defense.
Yes.
So that's where I'm like, returning is like, I'm like, yeah, I had that. I want to be the best DB alive. Like, I don't care, right? And then people, on top of that, people look at me, again, at my stature, like, oh, okay, yeah, he's just a returner. So many returners look like him. Not many DBs look like him, so he's going to be more of a returner than a DB. So it was like, that pissed me off to the point where I'm like, no, I'm going to be a better DB.
Yes.
So I was like, that's what I hung my hat on. And returning was literally just something that I did. So think of it like, I'm not comparing myself to this person. Let me preface that. But I'm not comparing myself at all. But I look at, when I see so many artists, right? Like, I take Jay-Z, for example. What did he start off with? He started off as a rapper. And now he's turned into a mogul in so many different avenues, right? Right? And you have to respect that. It's just like what got him started, what got his name out there. And then he's like, okay, you know what? I'm really good at doing this. But, the rapping is what built up my equity, got my everything I need to do. So that's kind of how I look at it in terms of returning. Remember, I'm not comparing myself to that person.
No.
I just want to make sure that is understood.
No, absolutely. That makes total sense. I think no one's saying you compare yourself to Jay-Z.
Yeah, I don't know.
But of course, seeing you too, just as a quarterback and as a receiver as well too, the closing speed you had on literally stopping on a dime and still undercutting different routes. I was like, oh my! I haven't seen that in a very, very long time. Just looking back, it's really, really what you did as a return as a DB. Definitely commendable. Like you obviously you are all Canadian for a reason. Done all this stuff for a reason, of course, too. But now going from Concordia, of course, doing all the accolades you got, playing against these grown men, as you said, still faster than them all. I'm going to take you now to the pretty much the pre-process and the process of the CFL draft. Okay, running the 4.42. Is that the fastest you've ever ran for a combine before, or no?
No. The fastest I ran was when I was in Miami. I ran a 4.35.
Yes, 4.35.
I ran a 4.35.
Holy crow!
And that is what I needed, but I didn't get it. I was so pissed. I was so pissed. I just wanted to run a 4, because the thing is, like, when you're playing football, if you run a 4.49, a 4.41, all they say is 4.4. Yes. So if you run a 4.39 or 4.31, No, that dude's 4'3", man.
That's 4'3", exactly. 4'3".
That's 4'3".
That's crazy.
And then like 4'2" that's just a whole other animal. Like you don't even think about that. But 4'3", 4'3" is what I wanted. I did it once, and I was just like, I got it. This is what I need to do when the time is right.
Right.
I came short, unfortunately, but hey, you know what? Whatever happened.
But still the best 40 time in that combine. So I think you definitely put it there. But you said something, a quote you said, I feel that, you said this, quote unquote, I feel that to get to the next level, you have to invest in yourself. I felt that it was an appropriate thing to do. So that's credit to your time in Miami. How long were you in Miami preparing for the combine? And exactly like taken away from that experience, was it just like, first of all, your broad jump was number 1 in the combine as well as the 40 time. Is that the two areas they focus on altogether, or was there more areas that they focus on in shaping your body into what it needs to be?
So biggest thing going back, I say that I kept saying this through this whole thing. I am a smaller person, right? I am 5'8", and I was at the time I was 183. So you need to be at that point. You need to show that you're tough.
Right.
And how you show you're tough is through, through the football drills and all that stuff. We'll get back to that later. But
right.
I needed to be explosive from a football standpoint. They call it explosive. And the 3 metrics that I was number 1 in were the broad jump, 40-meter, and vertical jump.
Vertical jump, there we go as well. But you jumped over a car, though. You jumped over a car in the video.
Jumped over a car.
You've done a lot, right? So.
And then as for Miami, I was down there for, I want to say, it was about 8 weeks, so about 2 months I was down there. And honestly, it was one of the best experiences I have ever had in my life. And it's something that's so memorable. I'll never forget it. Like, I'll go to my deathbed remembering day by day in Miami. And like, at that point in my life, like I just started really getting into like meditation and the mind and understanding those things. And I can recount like how the sun felt on my skin, the breeze that crossed by. I remember seeing the trucks. I can like vividly remember going down the freeway and seeing the different buildings and seeing the different people and just feeling the temperature when I was in there January to February-ish. And it was one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life. And that right there really showed me I could have played in the States in the sense of going against, like, for example, my roommate, Jerron Harmon, he was drafted 3rd round to the New England Patriots, 3-time Super Bowl champion.
Yeah, Harmon,
right?
Wow, okay.
Yeah, like me and him would have conversations every day. We drove together to training, from training. So it's like I learned a lot from him, and just like learning about what is like the United States experience, NCAA experience like. And he kind of gave me a breakdown, and literally the difference that I found was it's not that in Canada, for the most part, we're inferior from a physical standpoint, right? We're not far behind.
Right.
It's just the mentality.
Of course.
And that is really the difference. And like just how they're trained and those kind of things are different than what we experience. Like football down there that's the way of life. That's the way to get out. Whereas up here, football, you know what, man, if I don't go pro, it's not the end of the world.
Right.
Some of these guys, they're banking on it. So it's like when they're working out, when they're playing as if their life depends on it. Wow. For some guys, not all, I don't want to, broad stroke everyone, but just kind of the conversations that I've had with a lot of those guys that are in the NCAA, and they're telling me, and I'm just like, interesting. Whereas here, it's just like, That's just what I found. It could be different now, but that's just what my experience is.
Mentally from that. Oh, wow. Okay. That's great.
At that point, it's mental, man.
And a lot of things are mental, of course. And I think a lot of especially younger players have to understand that like it is pretty much not like 90% mental in everything you do. And that, I think that's what propelled you, because it has to be intrinsic as well too, right? Now going towards, like, yes, you were drafted 11th in the 2013 CFL Draft to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. All right, suffered an injury. That period, did you see more growth in yourself? Like, I don't know if that's something that you have thought about recently. Right now, of course, you're doing great right now, but is that something that you thought about the growth that you've had in that period to the point you had right now, where you are at right now?
Yeah, I've definitely grown a lot since then.
Right.
You know, I'm able to, again, let's say this again, hindsight is 2020.
Of course.
2020 vision. You look back, you're like, damn. And, you know, I look back and, like, I see the mistakes. If I went here, I should have went left, but I went right. I should have went right. I should have went left. I should all these different things. But I don't get upset about it because I did what I thought was the best thing at that very time. And you can't get upset about that anymore.
No.
Like, if you do that, like, I can't go back. This is not, Back to the Future. I can't go back and change things. Mm-hmm. So I know I put my concerted effort, and everything that I did, I thought it was in my best interest, even if it wasn't. And that's really important for me, at least, to fully understand. Right. And going back to, like, the growth aspect, there's tremendous growth that has happened from 2013 to 2020. Mm-hmm. And I'm still growing. And I accept that, the decisions even I make today, 10 years from now, are going to be like, I should have did this, I should have done that. And that's something you have to be willing to live with. And that's kind of how I wrap my head around it. I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm doing what I think is the best. And if I put my 150% or whatever it needs to be into it, then I know I'll be good.
Absolutely. And once again, just what you're doing right now, of course, is very valuable. And I remember you actually becoming the assistant strength conditioning coach for the Toronto Argonauts, right? And of course, then becoming the strength and conditioning coach. But even doing stuff with, the youth as well too. You're coaching and actually ranking players from Ontario and whatnot. Were you coaching ever before, like even during your playing days, were you ever coaching the youth back then and kind of, passing down game towards these young players? Is something you see yourself doing? And is it something that you, even after your playing career, do you say, hey, I would love to be coach. I'd love to do something to give back to the youth?
Coaching, I've done a few things in terms of coaching, but what I realized about myself is not everyone is you. That is the most important thing. And what I have to realize is, like, it's just not me mm-hmm. to want to coach the sport, which is why I went into strength and conditioning, a whole different challenge.
Right.
It's something I'm interested in. And then it gives me a wide array of athletes. So, like, I work in rugby now, but I've worked with basketball, hockey, soccer,
swimming,
many different sports. So for me, I didn't want to go down the aspect where I only know football.
Right.
And understanding, like, what's the culture of football. Like, I know all these things. Right. I wanted to, I went to school for sociology, so I wanted to see what different societies were like. And societies in this point are, what is rugby society like, hockey culture, what is, lacrosse, there's different things. So I just wanted a different challenge. Right. And, going back to, not everyone's you, I felt, in the little bit of coaching that I did, I would get frustrated because people didn't care as much as I did. Right? So that's kind of, and I see kids, I'm like, okay, you got to do this. It's like, yeah. Like, it's just not as important to them as it is to me. And that gets me frustrated. So I just didn't want to be in that kind of position.
Right. That's a great answer to a lot of coaches' frustrations, the fact that you care so much. And of course, you have this intrinsic, obviously, in you. And you don't want to give it to the kids, but they don't accept it. And I get that every single day with coaching in high school. But now, of course, yeah, earning your degree in sociology at Concordia and now a master's of exercise science at Edith County University. Were you doing any kinesiology in Concordia, first of all? And now that you're a strength and conditioning coach, do you see, like, did you always think, hey, I'm going to get my master's, I'm going to do this, I'm going to have it done by this certain point in your life? Is it something that just came with the job and was recommended?
So I really and truly, it started out, okay, let's go back a bit. So
yeah.
2009, I go to school. Summer 2010, do work is something that we called it. But, I needed to do something that wouldn't affect my training.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, training is the number one goal. So what am I going to do? So my dad actually recommended it. He's like, why don't you just this personal training?
Right.
I was just like, oh, you know what? That's actually not the worst idea.
Yeah.
So I started personal training. And at that point, personal training was a means to an end. I needed to make money because I needed to buy supplements, pay for training, do this. That's kind of how I thought about it. Then, I was doing that every summer, online training, doing things. Then I went to, everything happened and I got into the real world. So after, I got cut, after all these different things happened, I thought I wanted to be an administrator.
Mm-hmm.
So, I wanted to be I want to be an athletic director. So maybe I can go down that route. I need to take business courses or something like that. And I ended up doing a couple desk jobs, realized that I hate it. And I ended up going back to my bread and butter, which was personal training.
Right.
But I wanted to be a trainer of athletes.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So the route that I had to go, this was after school, after I graduated, by the way. This is not during. So I'm not thinking like I am now, right? Then. So basically, I graduated. I realized, okay, I just have a sociology degree. I have no kinesiology background. I end up going to get my CSCS. So CSCS is a certified strength and conditioning coach.
Yes.
So it's kind of the bare minimum to get into the S&C world.
Right.
So in there, you do learn a bit of kinesiology and things like that. But I ended up working at George Brown as a fitness supervisor.
Yes, I remember seeing that.
And that was just I was working with general public, and I didn't like it. But, it paid the bills at that point in time. And I realized I just wanted to work with high-performance athletes. So an internship came up with the Toronto Argos. I use a lot of my CFL connects to kind of get that job.
Of course.
Ended up working. I knew more than half the team because I played with more than half of these guys. So they put in a good word for me. Ended up getting it. And then I had my boss at that time was Matt Barr. He's my boss now. Ooh. But he knew my background and he was completely on board with it. He was just that's cool. But he's just at some point in time, you're going to need to get the science. Right. He's the training, that part, cool. He's that's not an issue. Understanding the fundamental science behind it. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of given two options. Do I go back to school and, do a 4-year degree in kinesiology? Or do I go get a master's 2 years in strength and conditioning, which was specify where it'll give you the science and it will give you the practicality and how to apply it to the sports science world.
Perfect, yes.
So, that's kind of the route I went down. Mm-hmm. And, I started that and I knew I didn't want to be a Instagram guy. I didn't want to be, someone who just does stuff for the flash stuff. I wanted to know the why behind every single thing that, I even did when I was training.
Of course. And now you
So,
understand.
yeah, so now I get, where I went wrong, all these different things, or what I did right, all these different things. And that's kind of the route I chose. And this is kind of the lane that I'm in. And I kind of want to be, on the strength conditioning side, as well as that academia side, to understand all these different things, and not just someone who's in it, like from a marketing perspective. So like the marketing is not there. It's okay, the hardcore science and the whys and those things.
That's perfect. And then that's once again, working in the gym too, a lot of these trainers wanted the high performance athletes, but they had no idea how to get there. They didn't know the science. So that's exactly, it's great that you're doing what you're doing right now. You are responsible for the physical development of the senior women's national 15s, right? Going to the World Cup, being successful, that's a great team. As well, of course, the Rugby Canada development academy program, whatever that may be. But when it comes to your scheduling for both, do they have it set out, hey, you're going to spend this time with the 15s, and then of course with like this time, of course, with the development of the academy and stuff? Like, how was that schedule all together for you? And now, because you are the strength conditioning coach for this program, do you find yourself being very busy around the clock, regardless of the season? And how does that shape up in a sense now that you're in the rugby world?
So how it kind of works is, from a scheduling and like how like high performance sport works, like at least in Canada, is things are just split up in terms of time and how many hours for that year are you scheduled for them. So for example, I'm scheduled with my rugby women's academy. I'm 0.8. So that means 4 days a week I'm with them. And then 1 day a week I'm with
15s.
My 15s. So how that works out is a sense of like, okay, one is 32 hours a week, one is 8 hours a week.
Right.
How you make up that time, it doesn't matter, but you're working that full 40 hours, however it is, but 8 hours voted to them, 32 to them. So my women's 15s team is actually a decentralized environment. So I don't see majority of them.
Really? Okay.
So we have girls that are in Australia, UK, Japan, BC, Quebec, Saskatchewan, like literally all over the world.
Yeah. Wow.
So with them, everything I do is all online, and there's a few girls that come and train with me. They're like, oh yeah, I'm in the area. They live in the Toronto area, so they come and train with us. Mm-hmm. Whereas my academy girls, they're all centralized in the sense that they're all in here. So they're coming to us 4 or 5 days a week.
Wow, that's great. That answers all my questions in general when it comes to that. And now going forward with the 15s and the fact that you're teaching these players online, the decentralized unit, especially with COVID amongst us, of course, as a teacher, we have to do everything online. Do you find that, like, once again, when you're actually, teaching them online, is it very easy for you to do as a strength conditioning coach, or is it more like we have to do Zoom calls? How is that process at all with these players, especially the centralized players now amid this virus? How are you guys navigating through getting everything, make sure that everything is great with those players?
So our 15 teams is fine. Nothing's really changed. What has changed is the fact that everything is at home. So I don't have, the external stimulus that is necessary to get what I need. So everything is body weight. We're doing push-ups, Hindu squats, plank, all these different things, doing pistol squats with a backpack or something like that. So for me, it's having to get creative so it doesn't get boring. Because, during this whole COVID thing, you live where you work, you live where you sleep, you live where you eat. You're doing everything from home. Exactly. So it can get really, really hard, right? Especially back in March, April, when the weather wasn't so good. At least now, Canada Day, beautiful day, you can go outside. But back then, it wasn't that nice. There's rain, so you're inside more. So just getting the athletes to be engaged. So, we use something called Team Builder. It's an app. So I put the workouts on there. And then from a standpoint, it's like I have weekly or monthly or bi-weekly check-ins with athletes. You know, I have them all on a calendar. Okay, you know what? We're going to talk to you today. And then from a standpoint, it's about, I manage about 80 to 100 athletes around there. So it's just making you get touch points with them as you go along.
That's
and
awesome.
Then, as a staff, we kind of split those things up. So just checking on them.
Once again, you talked about the mental. Do you find that these players too? I'm just so intrigued with this. But do you find that the players' mental well-being throughout this time too? You might find, I saw you even talk about an article where some IOC athletes are actually unmotivated throughout this time, or some are actually a little bit more motivated. How do you maneuver that too? Do they are the players very transparent with you guys and sharing exactly how they feel and how their mental is throughout this time as well?
That is a whole different can of worms. That's, like anything, in sport with athletes are very reluctant to admit that something's going on. Yeah. Right. So, hey, it's an old adage. If I ask you, or a stranger, hey, how you doing? I'm good. Even if everything is going bad, they're always going to say everything is good. So some athletes have been transparent, and some athletes are like, listen, it is so hard to get motivated and do this. Now what? 3
months?
We're going on almost 5 months. 4 months, 4 or 5 months. You know how hard that is?
Hard, man.
That's hard, man. Like, that's hard.
Yeah, for sure. That's
all your social circles are cut off, and every conversation is like you and I are having right now through Zoom. Like, it's not easy. So we do try our best. Some coaches have better rapport with athletes than some others, so we kind of split those up. But the mental is a whole other beast. That we have a mental performance coach that that coaches us and helps us with these things to help with our athletes, and he talks to the athletes and figures that out. But that is a whole can of worms that, honestly, quite frankly, I don't know if we'll ever figure it out.
Whoa, that's that's it. That's really, really interesting. But now coming to, that's something that I think I would really want to have just a talk about something about mental, because that's obviously 90% of what we do, of course, right? You can literally shut yourself down. It's as a pro athlete as well too. The mental is everything, regardless of it. And you said yourself, one of the strategies you do is watch Brian Dawkins before you play it. So all these players have their own techniques. But now instilling it in family, with your younger daughter, just the value. What kind of values would you instill in your daughter when she goes out to play sports? Like, what would you do? Would you treat it as though it's yourself? Hey, if it's not within, then it's not something I'm going to force onto my kid. Like, how are you navigating through that and even coming to that agreement, especially with your wife?
So what I think we as a society need to do is kind of go back to how it used to be, in a sense where you just focus on fundamentals. It's not, there's all these sports is all about money, and, I got to get my kid to college. So I have my 6-year-old kid going through an AAU program, playing 6-7 games in a weekend, and then training with someone. It's so unnatural for someone at that age. So with my daughter, all it is we want to, me and my wife, to collectively just want to expose her to as much as we can. And she kind of takes that reign and is like, okay, I want to do this. I want to do that. Whatever it is her heart desires. From the ages of 0 to 12, you are essentially building that athlete's, or that my daughter's, nervous system, in the sense of, we have exposed her to soccer. We have exposed her to basketball. We have exposed her to gymnastics, which is really, really important to teach a young kid gymnastics. We have exposed her to swimming. We've exposed her to just running in the field. And the most important thing to expose our kids in general is to creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is so structured. Okay, you're coming to basketball practice. These are the drills you're going to do. This is the time slot. We're going to do it from 0 to 10 minutes. It takes completely takes the creativity out of kids. Mm-hmm. And imagination is the biggest thing that you need in sports. Mm-hmm. So I look at, how I grew up. We just made up rules on the playground when we were playing hockey, playing basketball, playing 20, whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas kids now are going to organize gym sessions with coaches that are overseeing, and the coaches are then putting their own structure onto these kids and taking away these kids' creativity. So what I feel, I could be wrong, but I just feel a lot of the athletes that are growing up today are less imaginative than the generation in the past. So that's kind of how I look at things. So with our diet, all it comes down to is just exposing her and letting her be creative. Let her think, let her do what she needs to do. Like, we go outside, she wants to play soccer. Okay, whatever. Mm-hmm. Like, we don't put structure around, okay, kick it in between here, do this, kick the ball, man.
That's it. It's just fundamental. Yeah. We go to the park. There's like a little hill. She calls it the mountain. She's like, let's go to the mountains. Let's do this. Cool. We're not going to correct her and be like, this is a hill. No, this is what her imagination is doing. Let the wheels turn. Let them be creative. That's awesome.
Let them have fun. Right. When you get to that certain age, 12, 13, 14, they get to high school, it's like, okay, let's put more structure onto it. Let's do this. Expose them to a breadth of physical activity. Mm-hmm. Play manhunt. Play all these different games. Grounder. All these.
That's it.
This is what needs to be done. Going back to basic play.
That's totally right. And a lot of kids, AAU is a whole different conversation that has a lot of issues as well in it, right? But for yourself too, I want to talk about that. It's a very great answer you had there. But for yourself and your future, just to end this off, where do you see yourself in 10 years? Of course, you probably don't know right now, but where would you see, especially with what you're doing, you can see yourself continuing with this? I know yourself, just knowing yourself, I know that you're someone that always give yourself goals and kind of tries to achieve it. But where do you see yourself, kind of ending off your career? Is that something you even discussed with yourself yet or encountered?
For one of the first times in my life, this is really, I have a hard time figuring that out. Like, the world of SNC, the jobs of SNC is so ambiguous to the point where you kind of go where the water flows. So it's like, it's not like, my wife she works in the hospital. She can be like, all right, start here, move up to manager position, senior manager, some form of director, top executive. Like, it's like a linear progression. Whereas in the world of SNC, it's kind of not like that, because a lot of people just don't leave jobs if they're already there. So you kind of go where the wind takes you. But for me, I want to be in a teaching position. So it's something that I pride myself on. I like teaching. So getting into a university setting where I can teach as well as I can coach. So that's kind of, I keep it really broad, right? Really broad. It's not really linear like I used to be, but it's just like, I want to do a combination where I can teach people as well as coach people. Whatever that is manifested into, great.
That's awesome, because that's awesome. Jonathan Hood, he was actually a former CFL player, said the same thing. He's actually, teaching at Gulf Farmer, my alma mater right now, and still coaching. So that's something that I think you definitely can achieve at some point. But yeah, once again, thank you very much for joining the First 10 podcast. It's a great conversation about so much. I've learned a lot. I'm pretty sure our listeners have learned a lot as well too, man. Where can they find you? Where can they find your socials for everything online right now? Because people are going to want to ask.
Yeah, I'm not a big social media guy, but on Instagram I'm at krob23, and then on Twitter it's at Coach K Strength.
Nice. Stay strength. Appreciate it, man. I really appreciate it. And there's even one thing too. You said like there's something that brought up, with the ABR, with the anti-black racism that's coming up, and I think he brought a great point towards a Sherry Ford's article. So yes, once again, please make sure you guys follow, you ask questions, but yeah, really appreciate you having you on, man. Hopefully we can have you on very soon. Hopefully in the area where we can actually sit down and go through all of that. But thank you very much, man. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks, man.
No problem. Okay,
Have a good day.
You too. Let me just stop.